We are ready to rock. I am here with four-time NCAA wrestling champion in 4 successive weight divisions and current world champion Kyle Dake, a good friend of mine. Pumped to have you here, bro. It's been a long time coming. We've been working our ass off trying to get you fixed, and my God, has it been a flipping journey trying to figure out what's wrong with you in terms of with your body, but even beyond that, trying to like even just combat in such an archaic industry because people are so inclined to want to just tell us, hey man, you need what we're doing. You need like FP's great and all. It's great for rehab. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic for rehab, but I just don't know if it's going to make you stronger. So I think it would be important to kind of unpack these science there's science all over the place and all sorts of shit. As Kyle and I, non-native EMF and blue light, these things are all wired up. We got no EMF coming through this, and on top of that, this is actually because we just did some lighting adjustments on the podcast itself. This is actually more like I would say more like sunset light frequency. It has more of a tungsten light frequency right now, so don't worry about that with FP because we got that stuff covered. But anyway, Kyle. Explain what you've been through, bro. Explain what prompted you to go down this path of trying to pursue functionality at every step as it relates to training. What led you to functional patterns, and what brought you here?
Yeah, so I had a lot of success from just when I was a kid until today. At every level, I kind of was able to excel. There was times that I wasn't. Didn't accomplish the things I wanted to accomplish, and some things got in the way. And when I was in high school, I only lost 2 matches, but it happened to be at the biggest tournaments. And then when I was in college, I lost a couple matches, but I was able to make sure I was turned on for the 4 or the 20 matches basically for each of those 4 years. So it was something that was pretty special for me to be able to go through that. And then after that, it was kind of like I was kind of falling down, and
in what regard? Like
I just wasn't accomplishing my goals, and it was like, well,
so
what are you doing? Yeah, so like what's going on? And so the first year, I attributed some of it to the fact that I had a long season and that I was in folk style mode, not in freestyle mode, and the fact that I was behind one of the some people consider him the greatest wrestler in U.S. history. And then in 2014, I had a pretty severe injury while I was training. I fractured my scapula, tore my rotator cuff, tore my labrum, and tore my biceps tendon.
Tell them how you fractured your scapula. That's an interesting story.
So we were wrestling, and I was wrestling some Greco at the Olympic Training Center, and I had double underhooks. So both my arms were under his arms, and then he re-grabbed over the top. And he tried to throw me. Well, the drill was just 2-point takedowns, no throws, so no high amplitude throws. Don't try to hurt each other, and that was kind of the premise that I went in with. And so I jacked up an underhooks and was like kind of squeezing him, trying to take him down, and the guy I was wrestling kind of just fell in the default mode, and he went to throw and just caught me off guard, and I tried to pull my arm out, and my wrist got stuck, and then he just threw me over my shoulder, and then boom, my elbow hit the mat. Ran right through my shoulder and just messed everything up. So from then on, I was like, man, what am I going to do?
Was that what started it all? Or were you feeling pains before that?
I was feeling pains before that. All through college, I had ankle issues, knee issue, hamstring issue, biceps issue. My neck kind of hurt, my lower back hurt. And it was just like kind of things I expected that everyone should have if they were a wrestler. Like that's pretty normal. That's the status quo.
Is there anybody that doesn't ever feel that?
I don't know anybody that doesn't feel that. Okay. Like it's really like it's kind of crazy to think about that. Like, and then everyone's like, man, wrestlers are so crazy to do those types of things and be a part of that. And I just thought it was par for the course.
Yep.
So then afterwards, it was so it was the end of 2014 when that happened, and oh no, yeah. My foot happened before that. So my foot,
so
this is crazy.
Okay,
so that happened in end of 2014. That was like when I just got back. So that was in like December, right before I was going to go over to a tournament in Russia. Well, before that, I had my foot blew up. So my Liz Frank ligament just popped out the bone. And that's like a pretty serious injury because your foot is such a stabilizer, and all of your movement and biomechanics and everything. And this one ligament, the Liz Frank ligament, kind of holds your big toe on to the rest of your foot. And if you don't have that, then you have no stability, and it's really painful, and your foot just collapses. Anyway, so that happened at first. So I had gone through that surgery, went through another minor surgery at the same time, and then had the second surgery on my foot.
So you had three surgeries on just one foot.
Well, I had 2 surgeries on the foot and another minor surgery that I had to go through, and then so I was all surgeryed out for 2014, and I came back in late October, and I had been rehabbing like for camp, and that's when the shoulder thing happened. So then we're like, okay, I'm not going to go over. So the way wrestling works is the year prior matters for this year. Yeah. So for example,
so what was the first year that you had out of college? What year?
2013 I graduated.
Okay.
So
So the first 2 years out of the gate, you already came out with injuries out of college.
Yeah. So 2013-14 season, I jumped on the coaching staff, and then it was a non-contact injury that happened with my foot. I was just wrestling with one of our guys, and I went to take a penetration step and didn't even touch him, and boom. So that was early 2014 when that happened. Yeah. So I got that all taken care of, and then 2015. So basically, what happens is, if you win a world medal for the U.S., the following year you get to sit out, and at the time it was just a one-day tournament. So in 2015, I'm thinking, okay, I need to throw everything I have at this weight class because there was no other option. It was either 74 or 86, and at 74, there was at the time a 3-time world champion, 4-time world champion, Olympic champion, and a bronze medalist at that weight too. So I was like, I had my work cut out for me. Yeah. So I'm like, let me give it a shot this year. So I went through this brutal mini tournament in the morning. I had to wrestle like three or 4 matches, and then I had like a couple hour break, and then I had to wrestle. The guy's name's Jordan Burroughs.
Yeah.
I had to wrestle him in the best 2 out of 3 finals, and I ended up having to beat a world champ, another guy who won or took second the Regan, and just a bunch of hammers along the way. And so I get to him, end up just not competing the best of my ability, and I was really frustrated. But I'm like, I can't get surgery now. It's too late because I need to wrestle in the Olympics. Like that's
so what injury were you
goal.
Dealing with at that point?
That was my shoulder still.
Hold on. So you had the shoulder fracture while you were wrestling?
Yeah. So I didn't get anything done. I was just like, I'm gonna wrestle with one arm.
Fuck.
So I just went out and was just like, I need to try.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. I thought you already had surgery.
No, I hadn't had the surgery yet.
Burroughs.
So I didn't get surgery until 2016. So I went a whole nother year. So after I lost, I was kind of like, I was waiting to see what happened. So in 2015, I was like, okay, let's go to the World Championships and see what's going on. So Jordan ended up winning. So he got to sit out to the Olympic trials finals. And then at 86, I represented Jake Herbert, ended up not placing, not getting a medal. So 86 kilos had nobody sitting out to the finals. And that's a ginormous advantage.
Yeah.
Like having someone go through the same tournament as you is like, is a huge thing. So I'm like, I can compete with those guys. I might not be as big as them. I'm going to go up and try to wrestle them anyway. So I had done, some shoulder rehab and was like trying to figure it out. And this was around the time, after I lost, was around the time that I found functional patterns. Yeah. And it happened, it had nothing to do with my shoulder. It was all to do with like my back because I had been trying to put on so much weight. And, I at the time I wasn't trying to put on weight, but I just had some back problem. And I went and saw, I looked, you just happened to pop up in my Facebook feed. And I watched the tutorial, and it was just like a simple myofascial release, and I did it, and I was like, oh my god, this is it. This is. You
just felt like you were better off after.
Yeah, okay. I was like, how have I missed something like this? It's like glaring me in the face. Like, how come nobody has told me this? No one's ever said anything about this. Where's the information? So then I started going down. I'm like, okay, well, my ankle's been kind of hurting me, and my foot. I should probably do some more foot rehab, see what I can find. And I just started, just diving deep into the YouTube channel, and I was just like, "Holy cow! Like, this is insane! Like, I need to do this. I need to do this. I have to. No. Like, I need to be feeling good to accomplish my goals." And so I going through all the protocols and and then 2016, the end of 2015 comes around. I guess it was in early September, and we made the decision on the spot, like, hey, you're going to go 86.
Yeah.
Let's put on some weight. So I put on some weight.
Well, how'd you put on weight?
I just started eating a ton. And drinking and making sure, like, I started taking. I didn't even take any supplements.
Bodybuilding protocols, or you have to do deadlifts.
So I couldn't.
Squats to put on weight, bro.
So at the time, I was doing both. So I was doing traditional strength training and like Olympic lifts and things like that, but I was doing FP as well.
Yeah.
So it was like starting to infiltrate my systems of thinking, and a lot of it made sense.
It was more like you had to kind of like slowly start blending it in so you could replace the repertoire, right?
Well, I had no context. I had nobody telling me. There was no athletes out there talking about this. There was nobody. I had no idea. Like I didn't know. Nobody validated anything. Nobody went through it to say, hey, this stuff works.
Yep.
Like this stuff is going to take you to where you want to be, without all the other baggage.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was just like, I'm going to do both. So I kept doing the other stuff, and I probably gained like 8 or 9 pounds. There was a time where I got really heavy and ended up weighing. I was got up to like 190, which is pretty heavy for me. But instantly I touched 190, stepped on the scale, saw it, came back down, and was like, this is not for me. I can't move right now. I can't do anything. Like, this is terrible.
Yep.
And so I continued through and went to a tournament, didn't perform well, came home, and then we had in December was the U.S. Open. So there's every year there's a U.S. Open and then World Team Trials. Well, the Olympic year, the U.S. Open is in December.
Okay.
So I went to the U.S. Open and I'm like, I know I can beat these guys, and so I'm like training, and just getting ready, and all this time, I'm just starting to wrestle with bigger guys, because I was 165 wrestling, in my senior year in college, and wrestling, the weight class at the time was 163.
Your style seems to fit pretty well with wrestling bigger guys, because the strength differential is never an issue and the speed is always going to be there. So yeah, from the time that I've seen Kyle wrestle big people and throw them around pretty damn good. So
yeah, so I would just wrestle bigger guys. I had a couple partners that were around at the time with the Finger Lakes wrestling program, and I just wrestled with them. He was like 215 pounds at the time, so picking him up and slamming him was like really hard.
Yeah.
And just like that was the repetitions that I got, so I got used to moving bigger bodies. I was wrestling bigger guys. I had to find that strength. I had to find the leverage. I had to find where I'm going to put my position and what technique I was going to use to be effective against bigger guys. Because I couldn't use the same technique that I was using against the little guys, because it wasn't as effective.
Yep.
So I had to start building it in. I started building it up, and I had these other techniques.
So what's the main
using.
difference? Like the speed differentials, or what exactly?
Yeah, the speed's a lot different. At 86 versus 74, and then just like my conditioning had to be on point. So I was just going crazy. Coach Ahad had me running around like a crazy person, trying to get to where I needed to be. But so in December, I went in this tournament and I was 7th seed, and so that meant I had to wrestle the 2nd seed, second round. So I win my first match fairly easily. I think I got a tech fall in the first period, and then my second match I was wrestling a returning world team member, and not that year but the year before, and I was like, all right, well, this is where we see if you're ready or not, like if you're good to go. And then I ended up winning that match. It was fairly close. I used some of my trickery and some of my weirdness to
hyper flaccid stuff.
Exactly. I could put my foot way over my head, and I was able to scramble out of weird situations, and it wasn't typical 2 Rams bashing. It was like me trying to fold myself around
exactly,
and wrap him up. But and then I had another guy who was just a complete monster. He was a multiple time national team member, and he was NCAA champ, and he was just a beast. And I ended up beating him. And then in the finals, I wrestled one of my good friends now, but at the time it was my rival, was David Taylor. We were at the same weight class the year before, and we both decided to bump up. And at the time, it was like he was the 8th seed and I was the 7th seed. So the 7th and 8th seed came through the tournament, and we beat everybody, and then we made the finals, and I ended up winning. Well, what so happens is that if you at that time, if you won the U.S. Open, like the year before, if you won the U.S. Open and there was no world medalist, you sit out to the finals. Well, they changed it so that if you won the U.S. Open, you didn't get to sit out in the finals. So in 2016, I won the U.S. Open thinking I was going to sit out in the finals, but look at the fine print. No, you don't get to sit out. So again, still did all that with just trying to rehab my shoulder and like do whatever I could. So April comes.
At this point, you hadn't had. Did you have shoulder surgery?
I hadn't had shoulder surgery. I was just dealing with a torn
So you
labrum,
did
rotator
Burroughs,
cuff,
and then you did this tournament. No, how bad was your shoulder hurting at this point?
Oh, it was bad. It was bad.
So describe what it was.
So like if I tried to use my left arm and like grab somebody, or if I tried to grab a single leg or anything, and they sprawled on me, so they just dropped their hips on top of my shoulder, I was finished. Like I couldn't use that arm. So I would like start to get in the position, and I'd have to like learn to pull my punches. I'd have to learn to pull my shots, and I'd have to make adaptations to that. But when you get really tired, sometimes it's hard. Like you can't always do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was probably once every 2 weeks or something where I'd shoot and I'd scream out in pain and be like,
how much would it hurt like throughout the day?
Throughout the day, it was just like constantly nagging, but it became my norm.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was like something I just dealt with. I'd had it for over a year and a half, and I was just like, dang, I gotta figure this out and learn to wrestle with it. So most of the time, I just wasn't using my left hand. I was just using my right hand, and I was just like kind of going through and figuring it out.
Yep.
And 2016 Olympic trials comes around. I make it to the finals. I end up wrestling a kid fresh out of college. His name is Jaden Cox. He beat me the first match. I beat him the second match. And then in the third match, that
was neck and neck.
Oh, man, I was really close. But it was crazy. The crazy thing is when I wrestled him, I weighed like 100. I think I stepped off the scale, or stepped on the scale after I lost just to see. And I weighed 177. And my weight class was 189. And then guy.
I saw you look like when I was watching that.
Jaden is ginormous.
Yeah,
like even now,
dude.
he's huge.
Yeah, I've seen him.
He's shrunk his body a little bit. Well, that year Jaden ended up taking a bronze medal at the Olympics. Then the next year he took a bronze medal at the World Championships. And then this past year he became a world champion. Yeah. So he's no slouch. He's a beast.
Yeah,
like he's an absolute beast. And so at the time it hurt because I'm like, damn, I really wanted to make this Olympic team.
Yeah,
and I was this close. I was like literally 2 seconds away from potentially, from winning and making that team. But after I lost, we're like, well, what are we going to do now? And so I decided that I was going to go get shoulder surgery. So I got shoulder surgery, and I had, again, still studying functional patterns on my own. I was trying to digest every little thing I could think of and see. And I had shoulder surgery in May. I think it was May of 2016. And I hadn't wrestled, and then started, going through the rehab process. And, I went to a physical therapist, and, we were getting some okay results, but, over time my body was just healing. Just basic stuff, just, yeah. Yep. 90-degree external rotations, up and down, internal rotations, front arm raises, things like that. And, I was just trying to get it to be equal to the other side.
Yep.
And it was okay, right? So it yielded an okay result from what I was looking for. Luckily, I was able to mix in some of the things I saw online. So I'm like, oh, I can apply this, these few things, and there wasn't much that I could get from online. Well, there's a lot, but just for specifically for my shoulder, there wasn't a ton of things that I could do.
Yep.
And this was before I even met you. And so I'm like looking at all this stuff, and I'm like, man, like I need. And
have you found anybody else that was in the industry? Were you looking around, or
I was looking for like other protocols. Like I would just like go on YouTube and like shoulder rehab and stuff, and I like saw a couple things. People were doing some band work and like putting your arms together and like crawling up a wall, and like I don't know. I tried it and I was like, this is okay. It's like, well, it is what it is. So. Then I was listening to, I forget which podcast it was, or maybe it was a YouTube video that you were putting on. I'm like, you know what? I need to go see this guy. So I messaged you on Facebook, and I messaged you and it took you a while to respond, and I just figured I was on the back burner. I didn't expect anything. I was just like hopeful that you might respond.
Well, at that point in my career, guys, and Kyle knows this now, but I'd been not, I wouldn't say burned. I was just kind of burned out, just because it's like I'd work with athletes and generally they'd give me like a 50% effort. I was like, maybe they give me a 50% effort when they were with me. The remaining time they'd kind of be like doing whatever, lollygagging around, and then like, off season would come, they wouldn't do any work at all, and I was like, I personally I don't want to be dealing with this kind of crap. It's just too much, and so when Kyle, I'm not sure if I got your message or not. I'm not.
So
sure.
you got my message, and you said you basically I was like, hey, I want to come out like at this time, and you're like, yeah, come on out. You can work with one of my practitioners. And I was like, okay, awesome. Hopefully, he'll be there and we can kind of talk. And so it was actually with Johnny. So He was like, hey, work with Johnny. And I was like, all right. So I messaged Johnny, and Johnny's like, yeah, bro, come on out. And it ended up not working out for some reason or another. I can't remember what happened. I think it was, I don't even remember. It doesn't matter. But so we had to cancel. And then I messaged him again. I'm like, hey, can I come out this time now? He's like, yeah, I should be out there. You can come on out and we'll try to get some work in. And I still don't think you had looked, had known who I was, and nor should you have. I was just like some blonde-haired, blue-eyed looking 18-year-old.
No. I researched who you were. I saw who it was, and I was just like, I took yesterday, and I'm not going to tell you guys, but I listed off a lot of high-level athletes that I'm like, I wouldn't even touch them.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't even care because I don't agree with the way they live. So, no, I did my research. I'm just like, like in our industry, it seems like so prevalent to just find trainers that are like, I need to attach myself to a name.
Mm-hmm.
Let me attach. I see myself as a scientist. So for me, when I saw you, I was like, look, I'm here to improve you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to be like, oh, well, you know what? Let me attach myself to Kyle Dake's name. It's like, if I can't get this guy to win matches, and if I can't keep him out of injuries, then I'm not doing anything. Yeah. I feel very confident when I do that. I'm like, I want to make a contribution. So all I really wanted was just like, dude, I want somebody to come in and respect my time and really be like, dude, this makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's like, I was like, okay. So
So I showed up in Seattle, and I'm like looking around. I'm like, is this the gym? I kind of like walk in, and I forget who greeted me at first, and because you were running late for something, you had to go fix your car, or I don't know.
I think I just bought a car.
Yeah, you just bought a car.
Yeah.
And so we started doing some stuff, and like, I just remember thinking, dang, this is like ridiculous. And it was just the first session. It was that night. I just got in. And I had set up a clinic to, work with some kids, kind of like make it so I could, fund my trip and do everything like that. And you're like, hey, yeah, good job. We got some more, you can, there's some more stuff that you can do. Why don't you come in tomorrow? I'm like, okay, what time? He's like, well, we have this course going on. Why don't you come in the morning? I'm like, oh, he's got a course going on. I'm like, that's cool, man. I'll just check it out and sit on the side and kind of see what's going on. And the next day I get there and there's just like, there's people coming in. And now he brings them all around, and I kind of skirt over there a little bit and just like waiting to see what's going on. And they just start hammering it out, like start doing all this stuff. And like, he's explaining like what functional, like high level stuff about biomechanics, and I'm just like completely lost. I have no idea what's going on, and I'm like, how am I, like, and I was like upset because I'm like, I have to figure this out. Like, I have to do this.
Yeah, but bro, I already knew you were gonna pick it. Like, it's not hard to pick up.
Yeah.
You just got like, for anybody who's like concerned about that, like, okay, am I gonna be able to pick this up or not? It's like, it's not difficult. Once you do the exercise, it's like, oh wow, that's the code. Right?
Yeah, so that's but like I didn't know the language, so I didn't know like some of the things that you were saying. I've never heard them before, like anterior shift, posterior shift, lumbar flexion, hip extension. And I was like, what is he talking about? So the guys start, he's like, hey, use Kyle as a guinea pig, start putting him through some stuff, and I was like, wait, what? And then I was like, all right, let's go. So I started going through some of the exercises and just like doing them, and they're like, yeah, dude, you're doing it good, but you have to do this, this, and this. And so I would change it and like, all right, that's good. And then other times I would just get ripped apart. Like, you are like, this is terrible. And it wasn't even them. I'm thinking to myself, like, how are you so bad at this? Like, you're supposedly such a good athlete. How can you not do this simple thing? There's like 5 pounds of pressure on this, and you can't even pull your leg across. Yeah. You can't do anything. And I'm like, oh my good, like, what am I gonna do? And luckily we we got through the hard times with those guys, and it was just like a 6-hour session, like meat grinder with those guys. And then, then I worked out with Naudi later that day, and I just started picking it up a lot faster, and I was hooked after that.
Yeah, he and like when you came in, dude, it was like you picked things up really quickly. And I think what was awesome about it is when you did come in, you got to understand how I think, because that's the most important part of all of it, is like understanding, okay, what's this guy getting at when he's doing what he's doing, and what's the complexity of it all? Because it's like, people they'll throw out a term strength and just say, here's strength. This is going to make you stronger. And what do I say? I'm like, strength relative to what's context.
What do you mean? Like
exactly. What does that even mean?
What does strength mean?
So when people say, yeah, some people don't care about functionality. They just want to get stronger. And you're like,
how do you mean stronger?
Isn't functionality strength? Yeah. Isn't that what it is? Leverage, the principles of that? So I think what was really important is that when you came in, you at least kind of got to understand how I think, and because of that is why I think you've picked this up even faster. So I think even for future athletes, it might be the best way to go about it with them too, so they kind of understand what the thought process is, because this isn't the easiest thing to digest. And what's cool about Kyle is in general is that on your end, bro, is the fact that you went through that, you acknowledge that, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm this bad at these stupid little functions. Yeah. Just mixing two stupid little functions, and I can't even do them. And when you do mix them, what happens?
Boom.
Yeah,
nail it.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like you'll feel a great amount of trauma in the tissue, and then the next thing you know, you're like, okay, I can start getting past my my certain boundaries and whatnot. But I think that was a big part of it. I think it's part of what's kind of gotten us to succeed was that foundation that we had kind of established. But yeah, go on in terms of, so what happened after that?
So after that, and just being around, all those people that are so passionate about it, and like knew so much about the human body, and it was just like, okay, like how am I going to apply this to myself? Yep. What am I going to do? Like, how do I apply this to me? Like, I need to make a change. Like, I need to figure this out, like, now. Yeah, exactly. Like, there's no time to waste. I need to figure out this now. And, there was a few things that were bothering me, and they were gone. After doing the training, they were gone. And then all of a sudden, where I wouldn't be able to... What specifically
was bothering you?
I think at the time, my shoulder was still bothering me. Yep. So we kind of hashed that out, but my foot and my calf were still bothering me, and I couldn't figure out why. And I think it was Will Menzies. Is that how you say his last name? Will Menzies. Yeah. Thanks, bro. Yeah, shout out. And he just dropped into my 45s and just like crushed me, and I was just like, this hurts really bad.
Yeah, he's got some elbows on him too, bro. Will's a big mother. He's a big.
And for those of you who don't know what dropping into your 45s is, basically I was laying on my belly, he took his elbow and just slammed it in the side of my leg and just held it there. And my leg was just like just shaking everywhere. My glutes were going crazy. My calf was going crazy. And I was just like, this hurts so bad. And then afterward, it was like euphoria. I was like 10 times better. And now I had this crazy function in my calf. He didn't even touch my calf. And I'm like, what am I missing? Like, if I have a cramp in my calf, or if I have an issue with my calf, I massage my calf. That's how I get it better. But he didn't even touch my calf, and now it's better.
And that's the funny part. When I went with you to San Diego this last time, there was an athlete had a problem with his upper trap, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I just have this problem over here with my upper trap," and I'm like, "Okay, cool. I'm gonna work on your lat because that's what's dragging your shoulder down. I'm gonna hit your right abductor because that's also what's dragging your shoulder down from the deep front line." And he comes up and he's like, kind of like perplexed. It's like, what the hell? You did nothing with my upper trap, but yet, like, my upper trap feels way better.
It's great. And now it's like, okay, Naudi and functional patterns can kind of pull me out of pain. Like, they can pull me out of pain. Yep. But what does that do for me? Well, now I can function. Now I can build off of that pain-free living, really. It's like now I can actually do something with my calf. I can actually incorporate it to the rest of my body. And once you kind of get that coordination, then it starts to really like fall into place. And so as I was gaining that coordination, I started being able to move just a ton more weight and be able to just like, where before it was like 5 pounds, now I'm up to 20 pounds, 25 pounds. It's like, holy cow, like, this is insane.
And most people are going to be like, what? You're moving 5 pounds, 20, 25 pounds. Guys, if you institute a long lever, if you lose leverage, 25 pounds becomes much heavier.
Just think about a teeter-totter. You put, you have a teeter-totter, you put the fulcrum way over here, how much pressure you're gonna have to put down here to get this person up.
Yep.
It's ridiculous. You have to put a crazy amount of pressure up.
Yep.
Well, that's what strength is. It's leverage, and it's not always just about having things close to you and having complete leverage over them. Sometimes you're going to be extended and have to pull things in. Most people think that's just technique. Most people think that, that's, why don't you just get closer to it?
Yep.
Well, in the sport of wrestling, you can't just get closer to it. And
but never mind that muscles work off of, I believe, basically, and I don't fully understand. Guys, I'm not a physics person. I'm more of a guy that you know how I work, Kyle. Is I test things, I test, and if it brings about a better function, then that's the way I go about it. And so I don't. But from what I gather, that you develop the most strength when you lose leverage and learn to compensate from a I guess it would be from a long lever.
Yeah.
Like when you're grabbing a cable bar and you're ripping with that, it feels much more challenging, and you get way more muscular demand on that. And when you look at something like a deadlift or a back squat, it's like you're getting all the leverage in the world. That thing is like going right next to your body and whatnot. So it's like creating those long levers is really, really important to the development of actual strength. But yeah, go on. You were talking about after Will had released your quad or your posterior 45.
Yeah, so he just he released me and I forget what we were doing. We were doing I think it might have just been a simple adductor chamber or something like that. And I was really struggling and Will did it and I was just like, this is incredible. Like I need to understand this. Like this is something that I want to build around. So
when you say build around, what do you mean?
Build my life around, build my career around. This is something that I needed because
what made you draw that conclusion? Because most athletes don't draw that conclusion. Why don't they draw that conclusion?
I have no idea how they're not drawing this conclusion.
So why do you draw the conclusion?
Because I was able to actually do things. I was able to have functional strength. I was able to like do something I couldn't do before. Like I had all intents and purposes to move that thing, and I absolutely could not do it. I had no strength there, quote unquote, no strength in that position. And then we made a few adjustments. I gained strength in that position. So you mean like position
like in wrestling, like you're in a position.
Yeah, and it's people are like, well, how does it apply? How does it apply? Well, you have to you have to kind of go through it to understand how it's going to apply. Yep. And I can tell you how it's going to apply. You won't fully understand it until you go through it. Yep. It's kind of like one of those things that you have to test it for yourself. Yep. And I just had to test it for myself. And after I tested it, I'm like, this is going to be some secret juice. Like this is going to be something that is going to be really special and really prolong my career, because at the time I was like, man, my shoulder really hurts. The shoulder surgery was brutal. This recovery was brutal. And I was like, if I feel this, before I went and saw you guys, I'm like, if I feel this way, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing. And, at the same time, I had this feeling like, I'll be able to tough it out. I'll be able to tough it out and wrestle. I wrestled with just one arm in the past couple of years. I'll be able to do it. And in the back of my head, I'm like, man, should I just like hang it up? Like, what should I stop? And
how far were you? Because a lot of people are probably like, that's bullshit. You wouldn't have gone down that path. How much was that thought really even in your head? I had become a 4-time national champion. I'd been a national team member 3 times. All my that's a really successful career for a lot of people. Yeah. Like, it's an incredible career. Yeah, of course.
And I was like, I could go into coaching, make decent money, have a really good life, help a lot of people, because that's something I want to do, is just help people out and like help them in their wrestling game. And I think that it was just like, maybe that's something I consider. Maybe that's how I have to go about it. But the competitor in me was like, no, you have to do this. And I would step out on the mat in the you have to do this mentality and just be hurting. And I'm like, I don't know how much more I can go through with this. I don't know what to do.
Yep.
And so I was able to pull myself out of that, and I was like, now I can get back to work. Yep. Now I can get back on the mat, because if I'm not on the mat, what am I doing? Like, that doesn't help me in wrestling.
You can't just show up the day of if you haven't practiced.
Exactly. And so after that happened, I stepped away from the traditional lifting, and I was like, I need to do this full time. So I literally had hundreds of videos of techniques that you had been showing, and Will had, all these guys, Will, Johnny, everybody, were showing me, and I was like, I need to replicate this. So I was just like literally sitting at home watching video thinking, how am I going to replicate this tomorrow? Like, how am I going to, and then I'd bring it up again, I'd write it down, I'd like try to remember what it was called, And then I would just like, I had the power posture. So I was like kind of remembering which muscles were what and like trying to identify them and like, how am I going to do this? So I was just like constantly jotting things down and like, okay, I'm going to try this tomorrow. Yep. And I started doing it on my own. It was just really bootleg. And, but I had some incredible stuff. And I noticed these changes starting to happen. And I started getting, just being able to be stronger on the mat for a longer period of time. Yep. And it had nothing to do with my lung or my heart strength in terms of conditioning. It was just I had been in really good shape, like by all standards. Like I had been in really good shape, but I just, what does that mean? Well, I was able to wrestle a full 6 minutes. Okay. Well, how many times were you able to shoot in those 6 minutes? Well, I was only able to shoot like 5 times and, I was able to get in 2 scrambles. Now I can shoot like 20 times and get in 10 scrambles and come out and feel great.
That's how you gain strength, guys.
But that's the thing. It's like,
get more practice, man.
It didn't matter how much I did. That was kind of my limit. My limit was, right around I would say between 5 and 8 shots per match, about plus 2 or 3 scrambles. Yeah. And for those of you who don't know wrestling, it's just basically a leg attack. I grab the leg, try to throw the guy down. At the same time, he, pushes back. And then scrambles are like 2 cats in a bag just going crazy. And that takes a lot out of you. And now I'm in a position where, well, not even now. When I was doing it on my own, my conditioning just started to go up. And I was just like trying to get through everything on my own and, doing all this stuff. And in 2017, I went back down to 74 kilos and ended up losing again to Jordan. I lost like 2-2 in criteria the first time. And then we went to the trials and I beat him 6-6. So it was the same thing. I had to go through, the gauntlet of people and then wrestle Jordan best 2 out of 3 again. And I beat him the first match. Second match, I went out and I was beating him. Came down literally to the end, and I had the winning takedown. They challenged it. They won the challenge. They went from a takedown to a push out, and I had to go score. Ended up not scoring. So after that match, like I had spent so much energy, I was just like, all right, let's we're gonna have to regroup and go get it. And I tried to go get it and ended up losing. And after that, I was like, man, this stinks. Like, and the unfortunate part was that I only came back in November, and I had less than 6 months to get ready for this match, and it was just like it was crazy. So then, after that time, I had Pablo around, who's a HBS, I don't know, whatever he is, and
functional patterns gangster.
Yeah, he knows a ton. He's helped me a ridiculous amount in the time he's been around. And so we got Pablo out there, and he was helping me the whole time. And this past year was like the first time I had someone there to push me. And it was just like this incredible difference that I felt in my mechanics, in my strength, and everything. And, people are like, oh, you've always been a freak. You've always been a freak. Well, a little bit, when I was...
No, not a little. Let's be very real, Kyle. You're a freak, but even the freaks have their flaws, and then I mean, from what I've seen with Kyle, it's like he has unbelievable raw potential, but at the same time there are like critical errors that he would make in terms of his stances and whatnot that we had to make some adjustments on. Yeah. But ultimately it's like you are a freak. But that said, it's like there's how many Bo Jackson blew out his hip and he was a freak, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, what does that tell you? Yeah. It's like you can have all the freakish genetics, but if you don't have some level of coaching, how far is that freakish talent going to take you, right?
Well, yeah. I will say that I have incredible genetics. My mom and dad are monsters. Like my mom was a D1 college gymnast. My dad was a D1 All-American in college, and then ended up being a head assistant wrestling coach at Cornell and at Ithaca College, which is right next door. And so he's I just have incredible genetics. Very fortunate, but I always had to work extra hard because I came from a small town. And when I was in 7th grade, I wanted to wrestle varsity. And in high school or in New York, you're allowed to wrestle varsity in 7th and 8th grade. I was only 80 pounds in 7th grade. And the minimum weight class was 96. So I had to, during practice, I would wrestle with our 103 pounder who weighed, 110. So I was 80 pounds wrestling a 110 pound guy. And before I could step on the mat, you had to make a minimum weight, which was 88. So I'd have to chug literally a gallon of water to make weight. I'd step off the scale, projectile vomit, and then go out and wrestle. It was silly. But that's just nothing. But the point being that I was tiny. I was 80 pounds versus a guy who was 110 pounds. Then the next year, I was 112 pounds, and my closest partner that could push me was 145. So that's the guy I wrestled with. And the next year I was 130, and the closest guy I could wrestle with was 171. And then I was 140, and the closest guy I could wrestle with was 189. So I had, I had to wrestle big guys all the time, and I attribute that to a lot of my strength.
Yep,
like that's where my strength came from. I had to wrestle these big guys, and I had to deal with them pulling on my head. And
so you're saying it didn't come from doing Olympic lifting? Because there's so many people that come back and they'll be like, Kyle got all his strength from doing Olympic lifting and whatever and powerlifting or what, deadlifts and whatnot.
Olympic and powerlifting, and I did do all that stuff. But I was strong. I was strong before any of that happened. Like relative to the people.
When did you start lifting? At what age did you start lifting?
I was in 9th grade. Well, I was in 9th grade when I started kind of dabbling on my own, and then 10th grade, like halfway through my 10th grade year, I think. No, yeah, 10th grade. About 10th grade, I started doing it a little bit more seriously, and started,
you were a late bloomer, right?
Yeah, I was a real late bloomer. And so I just, like, as that happened, I had all this strength, and I was, like, physically less mature than other people, but I was still able to match them. And, obviously had success in high school. And then I got to college, and, I was still having success, and I was still, I would struggle with the guy who was below me. His name's Mike Gray. He's actually a coach now. He's, who I coach with. At Cornell, and he would kind of beat me up at the beginning of the summer, and then slowly and surely I started catching up to him, and until I don't even know when he knows better when I started actually beating him. I just remember being elated when I would get a takedown, and that was like halfway through the summer. I'm like, yes, I took Mike down today. I call my dad and be like, Dad, I took Mike down. Like, oh, this is crazy, and then eventually I started being able to go 50-50 with him, and then started, being able to beat him. And, but he's an incredible athlete too. He's ridiculously strong. But then I would have to go up weight classes and wrestle the guys who are a little bigger than me. And, so that's how I attribute most of my strength. Now that's not to say that I didn't have some benefit to traditional strength training. There's no way that I can't say, look, you did this, You got stronger.
That's the one thing that I debate with people that I argue with people all the time. They're like, oh yeah, you can't tell me that weightlifting doesn't give any benefits, and I'm like, it might give some benefits. I just think about all the joint compression that comes along with it. That's gonna significantly hinder you within a matter of a couple, 2-3 years. It's kind of like, it's the way I see it. It's kind of like you can have a technique that's really flawed or kind of flawed, and which technique are you going to use?
Probably the kind of flawed one.
The kind of flawed one. Yeah. And so when I look at a deadlift, this is a very, very flawed technique. It doesn't. Its applicability is so minimal. And I'm just thinking, okay, if you want to train to lift something up, wouldn't it just make sense to just pick something up and do that? Yeah. Like I think if for example, if I was to look at like football players, like if you wanted to play football and you're like, I want to get stronger. Instead of like grabbing a barbell, go to the wrestling room. Go learn how to wrestle. Go learn how to throw a damn dummy, and that will actually make you much stronger. If I want to actually really get stronger, I'm going to pick heavy, in terms of lifting strength, I'm just going to physically grab something and lift it up. I think that's the kind of like the logical conclusion to draw.
Before,
how do you quantify it though?
Yeah, how do you determine what's doing what? And the thing is,
how do you quantify strength anyway? What are the metrics that you can use to quantify what the hell's going on in life?
How? I don't know that there are
nobody does. And the thing is, for anyone to assume that they're that certain, that like, oh yeah, you know what, this is strength defined. You can't really. You can say that, but you can't say that with a straight face and think that, you know what, that's necessarily true, because it's way too complicated. And I've debated with PhDs, I've debated with all sorts of people on this, and after a few years, they got to start making some concessions and say, you know what, now the concession seems to be this. FP is great for rehab. Yeah. But what's it not good for? Strength. Yeah. You're going to lose strength. You're not going to be able to get stronger. And I'm like, Maybe, I guess, but we're inclusive of lifting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to get better at lifting stuff, then be like, here's an object, here's how you lift it, start lifting it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to start talking about like deadlifts and back squats and things like that, there's ways of developing the strength without necessarily having to compress your hip sockets, your knees, your back, your shoulders, any of that stuff. So I don't know. It's so complicated to really make a determination as to what's really actually functional strength. But I know for certain. I don't know what functionality is for sure. People are like, well, what do you mean by the term functional training? Well, I'm like, I really don't know what the hell it means. There's some clues that'll tell us. So, for example, there's a scientific study where apparently they measured the lifting strength of certain athletes, and they found that the athletes that could run a faster 40-yard dash time could lift more weight. And so I'm like, the correlations that they drew was, okay, the athlete that had more hypertrophy was the one that was stronger and was a better athlete. That's a correlation that weightlifters have drawn. The correlation that I draw is that if you can generate more force through your sprinting, which is a biomechanical root, it's like a biomechanically rooted function in humans, that you're going to be able to lift bigger. You're going to be able to lift things much easier. You're going to be able to do multiple things. Like you're going to do it better. You're going to be able to lift more weight because your body understands the production of torque, at least at the hip joint or whatever, or the thoracic region, whatever it may be. So the premise comes back to that when people say, "Oh, functional patterns can't get somebody to stronger," I go back to saying, well, it's like there's some science that suggests that lifting doesn't actually make you faster, but that if you run faster, you can actually lift more. So from that premise, I'm like, I feel like with you, do you feel like you've lost any strength doing FP?
No, I've gained strength for sure.
It's because my theory comes back to that if you run faster and you can create more leverage at the hip joint, the way that you're supposed to, at the shoulder joint, and you can connect pretty much the upper and lower halves of the body, you're going to get more leverage when you grab an object and you have to throw it. Mm-hmm. We do lifting. Did we not do some kind of lifting stuff today, or have we not been doing things that involve some kind of lifting?
Yeah.
Of weights. We're moving weight. So the thing is, with FP, it's not like I'm saying don't lift weights. We're just saying don't treat life as if it's a linear thing when you're living in a non-linear reality. And my God, if you want to talk about a non-linear sport, Wrestling is so it's not random, but you just watch it. Like the first time I started watching Kyle wrestle, like the first time I went to Cornell, and I was telling you and Greg about this yesterday. It was like watching a car crash, one car crash after the other, and I'm like, this is so over my head right now. This is so freaking over my head. I can only take so much of what this guy's doing. I gotta get to work in terms of what it is, because it's like, this is such a non-linear reality. And then when I look at that, then I'm like, people think a deadlift is going to apply to this. You've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. It didn't make any sense. It didn't make sense then. And the further I go down this path, the less it makes sense. And I'd imagine you got to feel the same way, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't do any of the traditional strength training protocols anymore. I don't do deadlifts. I don't do back squat. I don't do bench. I don't do power cleans. I don't do any of that stuff anymore. And I mean, you can ask guys who I wrestle with all the time. You can ask, it's like, this dude is ridiculously strong, and there's other guys who are ridiculously strong, and they happen to lift weights too. Like I'm not saying that you can't be strong because and lift weights, but I think a lot of people just kind of overvalue a certain side of cross training.
Exactly.
Because there's never been a study where they've taken 10 guys who and studied their 40-yard dash, or studied their how do you study strength in wrestling? It's just like W's. I don't know. How do you study that?
Exactly.
How do you take 10 guys who don't lift weights, and then you take 10 guys who do lift weights, and then let's see where they end up. But that's not going to be studied. Like it's nobody will do that.
Yep.
And maybe eventually it could happen, and something could happen that way, but I don't see it that way. And hopefully functional patterns gains enough recognition, and that we can start fixing people and getting them out there on the mat, and they just crush everybody like that. Well, that's the premise of it, right?
The premise is trying to get everybody down to that fundamental root of what makes an athlete great. What kind of creates that leverage, and that's what I struggle with. And I always tell people, like, look, man, FP is not. I don't even say that. I don't even mention the term perfection because it's so damn far off. I just look at all the variables that I don't account for, and recently when I had my debate, I was like, man, I can't believe that people aren't looking at any of these variables. It just dawned on me at certain moments in my career. I'm like, it dawns on me. I'm like, people really aren't thinking about what they're actually up against in life. they're not seeing that, and I don't think athletes do. I want to get into this. Do you think that there's social pressure for athletes to lift weights?
Yeah, there has to be, because there's social pressure with anything.
Yeah.
So there's social pressure to go out and drink a beer. There's social pressure to go out and party, especially when you're in college. And that's the kind of the context that I'm looking at, is because, I see it every day. I see those guys going out.
Out of curiosity, were you the guy that would go out and party?
Oh, I never partied. Never ever partied. There was probably 2 or 3 times in my like freshman orientation that I went out and like went to a party, and I was like, man, I'm tired. I just want to go to bed. Like, I got to train tomorrow. Like,
Yep.
what am I doing? And I was just like, I tell this to people all the time, is I had this, what I call a priority filter. And, I had these little boxes. I'm like, okay, is this action going to lead to the result I want? Like, my priority is this result. Is this action going to lead there? And I'd be like, no. Okay, I'm not doing that. Yes. All right, I'll do that.
Athletes take note.
No. Yeah.
Athletes take note.
It's like, how people want to have everything, and they want to be able to have that social life and that experience and do that. And you can, like, there's people that can do that, and they can still have great results. But could they have better results? And I wanted to make sure that I had the best results I could possibly have. Not everyone's going to be like me. And I don't think that everyone should be like me, because everyone's going to have a different upbringing. Everyone's going to have a different set of experiences that lead them to that moment. And maybe they need to compensate in a different way than I did.
Yep.
There are some things that I did that were like absolutely insane. Like, people would call that insane. And, just wrestling in general, like, people think that's insane. And putting your body through the things that I put my body through, they think that's insane. And, I understand that. Like, I understand that not everyone's going to be like I was.
Yep.
And that's okay. But you have to realize, like, okay, if these are the results I want.
If you want to be healthy, do they have to be like you are?
That's up for debate. Everyone's going to debate about that. Like,
I wouldn't, man. But yeah.
There's so many things. Like, I've gone down so many different rabbit holes because my thirst for greatness is so high that I was willing to try almost anything. There's obviously certain moral lines that I would draw, and I would try to do everything and try to figure it out. And I did. I went through all of those things, and I would love to pass my experience on to other people and just tell them, like, hey, this is what I went through. And
was there social pressure that you felt when you? And I'm not saying. Was there any pressure for people to say, hey, why don't you just keep going back to lifting just in case?
Yeah, there was pressure for sure. But it was hard for people to say anything to me because I had been getting results.
Yeah, exactly.
So they were like, "Oh, you're doing these things and you're getting these results. Okay, like we can't really tell you anything different." And that's like, but at the same token, I would see all my competitors, their Instagram stories, what they would post on Instagram. I'd see, people talking about it, and, I would just do my best to educate people and tell them what I'm doing a little bit. And if they were interested, then I'd dive right in. I'm more than willing to help anybody that wants to know.
Yep.
And, obviously I can't help everybody. So this is kind of the reason we're doing the podcast.
Yeah,
so if they want to know, they can come here. But, any of my old teammates, anybody that's still competing, like, I'm more than willing to share my information. It's just how are you going to execute?
Yeah.
How are you going to take that information and use it to your advantage?
How much of a commitment has it been?
Oh, it's been a huge commitment. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's a complete lifestyle change. From every little thing that I do throughout a day is for my career. Some people are like, man, this dude needs to lighten up. Like, he's just like not living life to the fullest. And I'm like, what are you talking? What am I missing out on?
What does that mean?
Honestly, what am I missing out on? Like, I eat incredible food. I get to go to incredible places. My body's never felt better. Like, I have a beautiful wife. I have a beautiful child. Like, what am I missing? I'm with my family, pretty close to 24/7. I get to help people. I get to travel around the world and help kids. I get to, and I get to do all these incredible things. What am I missing out on?
Yeah.
I have nothing I'm missing out on. There's nothing I'm missing out on. I'm just
because you're probably stimulating all the hormones that need to be stimulated for you to feel satisfied. You don't need to you don't need to compensate, man.
I don't need to compensate with anything, you know. And there's, you know, there's always a study out there to prove something or another, and whether it's conclusive or not is up for debate, because there's a lot of things out there that are like, you made a conclusion, but that's not what the data said.
Yeah, totally.
And, you know, it could come from anything like, you know, how many hours should you sleep? How much water should you drink?
Should you be in the sun?
Should you be in the sun? How much sun should you get? You know, should you, you know, how many video games should you play? And like, like, how much should you work out? How much time should you give your recovery? Should you sauna? Should you ice bath? Should you be, you know, what kind of massages should you be getting? There's so many things that you have to go through. And I've gone through them all. And some people are like, oh, well, I had great results with this, so I'm going to do this. Well, did you have great results because of that, or did you have great results despite that?
Yeah.
And
or even if you get the result, it's like vegans are like, you know, I quit eating meat for 3 weeks and I feel amazing. Like, and maybe some people do fine with the vegan diet, whatever it may be. I've never met a person trying to fix their biomechanics who did well on a vegan diet. So I'll put that as my kind of like my experience. I've never met anybody trying to change their mechanics who did well on a vegan diet ever. But with that said, you don't, even if you get benefit on something in the short term, it doesn't mean that it's going to carry over. Like it's like you have one tool, but it's like, is that tool going to work forever? If you do one type of breathing and that's the only type of breathing that you do, might you be hindering yourself because you're only focusing on that one thing? Mm-hmm. So just because something works one time, it's like, yeah, heroin made me feel a lot better, and be like, yeah, you might be fine for a year. But about 2, 3, 4 years down the road, and obviously that's kind of an extreme example, but it goes like that with anything. So it's like, so even when somebody does kind of tell you, well, it gave me great results, for how long? Yeah. And what happens when the results do wear off? What happens when you do the Olympic lifting and, you know, I feel really explosive? Are you going to talk about those days where you're bedridden for 2 weeks because your back is completely stiff? There was one time I knew a guy that was, him and I had a little debate on social media. This is about 5-6 years ago, and this is when I was like at the heart of at the prime of me saying that, you know, Olympic lifting is a waste of time. It's a waste of time. If you're trying to become a better athlete, or you're trying to move better or become healthier, Olympic lifting, and I'll just tell you, plain and simple, is a waste of time. If it's your sport, fine, play your sport. Do your thing. If you want to smash your joints for making next to no money, by all means, go ahead and do that. That's fine by. It's not really fine by me, but go ahead and do it. You're gonna do what you're gonna do. I'm not going to try and change your mind. But if you're trying to enhance your life, there's no way you're going to convince me of that. But anyway, I saw this guy. Spotless technique. I'm talking like, that bar is like symmetrical as hell. Knees are symmetrical as hell. Hips are symmetrical as hell. Ribs, everything. You look at everything, I'm like, oh my God, this guy might have perfect Olympic lifting technique. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And he happened to be friends with one of my students. And him and I have a debate. No bullshit, about a week and a half, 2 weeks later, he's bedridden for 2-3 weeks and he can't even move. And it was just because he had bent over and tried to pick something up, and he had pushed it too hard during Olympic lifting. He went to like give an example, like make an example, and he probably shouldn't have been like pushing it. He did it, and then he went to go pick something up, bop, and then at that point he had a back spasm. And I wonder where he's at these days. But they never make those concessions. I wish you don't see people make as many concessions as they should when it comes to the weightlifting. So because something helps you immediately doesn't necessarily mean it's going to carry over for 5-10 years, or even 6 months. How long is that benefit gonna continue? That's the question that I ask. And based upon what you've experienced yourself, you feel like you've probably have the benefits diminished, plateaued, or are they continuing to rise, Kyle?
Oh, continue to rise for sure. But and we have to, before we can go on, we have to say, insane things happen all the time. Like, you get hit by a car, and I don't care what you do, you're going to get decimated, right? So agreed. It's like,
agreed.
And there are freak accidents that happen, but there shouldn't be a freak accident that happens to every single person.
Yes.
Like, not every person should be hit by a car when they just go down to pick something up.
But can you prepare for like another billion possibilities that you can prevent.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Like, you never know. An airplane might crash down on top of you and kill you. What are you going to do about that?
Yeah.
I'm not preparing for that reality.
Nothing that you do is going to prepare you for that, other than maybe just like using your brain and being able to shoot it down with a laser.
Yeah,
or something.
but what are the odds?
Yeah, seriously.
So are we going to prepare
No.
for those odds? That's the question.
You got to look at what are the most important functions throughout your day. And for me, the most important functions of my day are to be able to play with my daughter, be able to get up out of bed, be able to walk to my truck, be able to go wrestle for 2 hours, be able to come home, put my daughter to bed, and those are the functions that I need.
So you need joint traction.
I need to be able to move around,
Yeah.
and I need to be able to do it efficiently, so I'm not like constantly in pain. Because what happens when you're in pain, your body produces cortisol, and you just start freaking out. Your hormones become unbalanced, and that's a huge issue.
Yep.
And it's a snowball effect after that, unless you immediately mitigate it. And I think one thing that functional patterns has given me, and I will say that maybe it's a level of maturity. I just kind of grew up a little bit too, but I've become a much less hostile person, even on the wrestling mat. Like I'm still trying to go out and trying to throw a dude through the air, but I'm not doing it with a specific intent. Like I'm gonna hurt this guy.
Yep.
Like I had that intent when I was younger, and I was like, what is that now? Like I look at it, I'm like, what is that? I want to hit cool stuff. I want to be able to go out and perform the techniques that I've tried, and do cool things. Like that's the stuff that I'm worried about, and do it for a long time, and do it without pain. And if I can go through my career, let's say my career ends in 6 years, or ends in 2 years, or ends in 10 years, whatever it is, I want to be able to accomplish that without any pain. I want to go out on my own terms.
And that's a big thing for me. Athletes are humans first, and I think we should start thinking about, even with athletes, like to some degree thinking humanely about humans. And that's one thing that really concerns me, is like I want to know that if a guy is going to work with me, that in 5, 10 years, 20, 30 years, they're going to look back and be like, dude, thank freaking goodness I worked with that. Because, man, that's saving me big time right now. Because that's really what counts. I mean, you're an athlete for how long, bro?
Yeah.
It's a blip. Mm-hmm. And you're a human for how long?
Yeah. And this is where it comes, there are freaks. There are absolute freaks who can, it's such a small percentage of people can get through wrestling with no major injuries. And it's so small that you can't even account for them.
Yep.
You have to look at the majority.
Yep.
And you have to look at like, okay, the majority of wrestlers just high school wrestlers who didn't even go to college, most of them are walking around with aches and pains, like from wrestling. Yeah. Like they didn't do anything to mitigate that. College wrestlers, it's a brutal sport. Like it's brutal. But what are you doing to mitigate those things? How are you doing? What are you doing to mitigate it? Now, if you are good enough to continue your career, if you are good enough to continue and wrestle at the senior level, the Olympic level, how long do you want to do it for? I can only think of a couple guys who went out on their own terms. I can think of countless number of guys who went out on terms that were like, I can't do it anymore.
Bro, and that's what you normally hear with athletes anyway. It's always like, okay, like, the injuries just got too much. They kept piling up. They just kept, I tried this, I tried that, and the injuries kept piling up, so I just had to hang him up.
And when you think about it, it's like, okay, maybe you get a small injury. Maybe you kind of you tweak your hamstring, or you do something to your ankle, and that takes you off the mat for 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks. Well, what are you doing in those 2 to 4 weeks? Are you able to go perform on your sport? How do you build strength? I build strength in wrestling by wrestling. Like that's how I'm going to do it.
Yep.
There's certain things that I can do in my cross training, but you got to remember that is cross training. Yes. That is not your main form of training. That's not what you're trying to do. Like what I'm trying to do is be a wrestler. Yep. Like I'm trying to go out and perform and hit techniques. I'm not trying to be the best, the best cross trainer. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not going to be the best swimmer. I'm not going to be, exactly. That's a form of cross training. I'm not going to be the best swimmer. I'm not going to be the best runner. That's a form of my cross training. Like I'm not going to be the best at those things, but what I can be the best at is wrestling. Yep. And that's where you say football. Football, if I want to be the best football player, maybe I'll cross train with wrestling. Yep. Maybe that's something I can do to cross train. Yep. There's other things that I can do to cross train. Most people think of running, biking, swimming. Those are like in weightlifting as the 4 main things that you can do for cross training. Yep. Well, there's a lot of things that you can do for cross training. There's a lot of different movements that you can do for cross training, and you have to make the decision for yourself. Like, where am I going to put my time?
Well, I think what it comes down to, it's like, is the cross training compatible with the mechanics that you're going to find in wrestling?
Yeah.
And is throwing prevalent in wrestling?
Oh, yeah.
But the only difference between throwing a spear and wrestling is that you're throwing human bodies.
Yeah.
So you have to be way more precise when you're going to throw a human body, or you'll blow out a joint.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of them. But are there running mechanics in wrestling?
I mean, yeah. Closing distance, learning how to move side to side. I mean,
rotating, hip extension,
exactly.
hip flexion. It's contralateral reciprocation. It's all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So those are like the premises of obviously where we've gone with the training, and obviously that's beneficial. But with that said, what has been my constant focus over the last few months, Kyle? Since I just gotten back from Cornell, what is it? Us blending in the biomechanics of it all and then putting it into wrestling. That's the premise. It's like all I'm trying to do is blend in the traumas that we induce in training into what you do in wrestling, because you need to be a better wrestler. If that's where if that's the most likely place where you're gonna get hurt, then guess what I'm gonna try and prepare you for the most? That particular freaking reality. So it starts with we're humans before we're athletes.
Yep.
So it starts there. But at the same time, like the more mat time you get, the happier I am. The less mat time you get, the more unhappy I am, because that's where you fine-tune your skills. It's the repetitions, it's the learning that goes on in there that tells you where you're going to go. Why do guys take steroids? Why? So they can get more mat time. Because they get more reps. But if I can give you the exact same thing without you having to inject a needle in your ass, then why not do it?
Yeah.
That's what makes the most sense to me.
The thing about it too is, what was I going to say? Holy crap!
What was we were getting.
The cross training. That's what I was saying. So the fact is that if you think about wrestling, how you build your conditioning. How am I going to build my conditioning? And most of the time, what are coaches going to say? Well, sprints at the end of practice. Well, that's a decent way to do it, but I think there's probably a better way to prepare yourself for a wrestling match conditioning wise. Well, one of those easy things to do is stance and motion. So doing stance and motion is a great way to increase your conditioning in the sport of wrestling. Well, what does that mean? Well, you have to get down in your stance. So basically,
like
what you do,
shadow boxing or something,
just like shadow boxing,
but
except
wrestling
related.
Okay, cool.
So you do something. You do your number one shot, your number two shot, 2 shots to score. Down block, which is basically you don't let somebody touch your legs. Sprawl, so when somebody does get to your legs, you get your legs away. Yep. Spin behinds, like all sorts of little different techniques.
Yep, and I see you working that out all the time.
Yeah, so basically after practice, what I'm trying to do is an easy way to condition is just to do stance and motion drills. And if you have a good coach, they kind of know what to look for and how to put you through that. And what would happen, and I can remember it so vividly, is when I used to do stance and motion, I wouldn't really get tired because I wasn't really doing much. No. And then someone pointed that out to me, and I'm like, you know what? You're right. I have to do more. So I tried to do more, and I couldn't. Like I literally physically couldn't get down in my stance anymore because I was so tired from practice, and my body just wouldn't allow me to do it. And now I can just go through stance and motion and just constantly go. It's really hard, don't get me wrong, but I can take, in a minute, I can take 25 shots. Yep. I can go, bam, 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 bam. And that's really hard. That's really hard to do.
And why is that important?
And that's important because when you're tired on the mat, you have to be able to execute. You have to be able to execute when you're tired. Someone's going to be pulling on your head the whole time. You're going to get in scrambles. Your breathing pattern is going to be messed up. You're going to have to compensate in so many different ways that you're going to fall back on your training. Well, if I fall back on my training of stance and motion, then I'm doing good. But if I can't get there, what am I going to do? And that's what you've really helped me do and Pablo has helped me do is make it so that I can get into my stance when I'm tired.
Yeah.
When I'm completely fatigued, can I get in my stance? And can I work for my stance? It's not just a matter of will, because I had the will. I've always had the will to want to do something. Yeah, exactly. If a coach told me you have to get in your stance, it's going to make you better, I was going to do that. Yep. But I physically couldn't. Yep. I physically couldn't get down there for 25 shots. I couldn't do that. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to look. Yep. And fortunately, we figured it out, and now we can do it. So
we haven't fully figured it out.
I can get in my stance.
Yeah, okay, we can do that, but bro, we have
there's a lot of other things we got to go.
Every time I go into it, I'm like, because there's always. You want to be great, I want to be great too, mm-hmm. bro. It's just a premise. I'm like, I'm very passionate about what I do, obviously, and so I'm like, you're saying that. So what I'm trying to say is like, look, if you focus on functionality, you get everything: muscles, functionality, better hormones, psychology. You get everything across. Even make more money in life because you're gonna have more energy. You'll make better decisions. You're literally gonna get everything you're probably gonna want if you live functionally. I think, and so on my end, I'm like, if I can take everything that I know needs to happen in the physical world in terms of high level athletics, in terms of what you're doing in wrestling, and I can duplicate what's going on in there, all the muscles are going to volumize in relation to that particular function, and muscles are going to get bigger. So I'm always thinking, what's next? What do I need to do to get this guy to make this next connection? So it's like, at the same time, yeah, we've made some
Progress.
We've made major progress. Seeing you wrestle this last time when I was at Cornell, I was a little almost teary eyed. I was like, dude, this is fucking amazing. Because the first time I saw your stance, bro, I was like, woo, that was bad, bro. I have it on video. I can even show you later, bro. It was bad. I was like looking and going like, oh Lord, what am I going to do? Like this, I told you before, I trained MMA fighters, and I was like, that's a cakewalk compared to what you're doing. Cakewalk, like nothing, because you can stall.
Yeah.
You can lay on your back, stall, lean up against the cage, stall, do stuff like that. With what you're doing, it's like there's no moment to stall. You stall, you're getting penalized the point, right? So there's no stalling. It's a 6-minute sprint. So imagine if you could imagine what wrestlers do. If you guys don't, I don't even know wrestling. I'm just speaking it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But wrestling is essentially 6 minutes of straight sprinting.
Yeah.
Is that pretty? It's a constant sprint, and so I look at that and I'm like, wow, this is a freaking train wreck. And like, all I can have is gratitude for getting to have to adapt to this damn train wreck. Because man, is it brutal. Man, it is the most brutal sport I've ever witnessed. I can't imagine of a sport that's more brutal because you don't get to rest. And you're sprinting the whole damn time. And then you're doing this in a tournament setting. I'm like, my God. And so I saw what your stance looked like this other time. Even when you were fresh before, you didn't move like that, bro. So we're getting better. But it still needs to be a lot better. And you already know how I am.
Yeah, and the cool thing about Naudi is that when he says functioning better, it's not like he just came up with this completely on his own, like in terms of what you should be eating, how you should be sleeping, what you should be doing. He's trying to figure this stuff out along the way. He's learning from, he's done pretty much the same thing that I've done in the sense that he's trying to find the door that works optimally. What serves the best function? How can I sleep the best? How can I eat the best? How can I do these things? How can I get there? And it's not like we just came up with our own system and we're trying to sell a product. It's like, no, if you want to learn about eating, go talk to this guy. If you want to learn about sleeping, go talk to this guy. If you want to learn about training, talk to this guy. If you want to, those are the things that really attracted me, because at the end of the day, these are all tools to use, and you just happen to put them all in the same place. You have that information.
It's inclusive.
Yeah,
it's inclusive. So people are like, oh, I can't just regiment myself to functional patterns because I have to spread out. I'm like, wait a minute, we got kettlebells, clubs, cable bars, pulley machines, medicine balls. I mean, we use treadmills. We use different running techniques, agility drills, lifting techniques, tornado balls. We are by far the most diverse training system out there, period. We correct scoliosis, kyphosis, lordosis. We work with double amputees. We work with people with neurodegenerative disorders. We work with high school athletes, collegiate athletes, professional athletes. We go all across the board. So if this one system already encompasses all of the working aspects of other systems, even the involvement of breathing techniques, from yoga, even meditative techniques, whatever. If we take all that in and we incorporate it into one training and we actually showcase results with it, it's like, do you really need to go out of house to actually figure out what you're supposed to be doing? Mm-hmm. And for me, my constant obsession is not giving people an out. It's like, look, so you want bigger delts, you want bigger pecs, I'm going to give you that. My premise is to give you that. I don't want to give you an excuse to leave, because if the second you leave that function, there goes the hip compression. Mm-hmm. There goes the labrum surgery. There goes these next damn problems that are going to pop up. It's like there's a higher propensity for that. I can't prepare everybody for every reality, obviously, bro. I am not perfect. There's no way I can ever know everything. Maybe one day. It's like with AI or something. But it's like there's no way to know everything for every situation. But there is a better way to prepare yourself. And I firmly believe that the route that we've been going on is the best route, because we actually test. And the premise is that when we test something, we question, well, is this test even relatable to life? That's the most difficult freaking question to ask, because you have to ask yourself, well, am I convincing myself that this is relatable, or is it really relatable? Yeah. Isn't that really what it comes down to?
It comes down to whether do you set out a plan and make the plan to fit your result that you want to see? No, you constantly question like, am I doing it right? nope, that was wrong. Nope, that was wrong. Nope, that was wrong. How am I going to get better? And that's like, I was just like, dang, this guy is like, he's not telling me that what he has is pure gold. He's saying, take it with a grain of salt. I'm working here. Let me try to help you, and we'll keep going.
And I'm grateful that you've been patient with that, and I'm grateful that everybody. This is what's awesome, guys, and I'll tell you, if you're a personal trainer out there who's getting in the industry, don't shoot yourself in the foot by making yourself out to be like you're some guru or whatever it may be. I tell people, hey, bear with me. It's like it's the most uncomfortable thing to tell somebody, because guess what people want more than anything? An expert to give them advice. And when I'm like, say, bear with me, I'm like, I'm not certain of what I'm doing 100%.
Yeah.
I'm way more certain than any physical therapist, any chiro, any guy out there. I'm more certain than anybody when it comes to that realm. I'm very confident in that, and I've had to like put in a lot of work into myself to clearly say that with all confidence. But at the same time, it's like, I'm lucky that I have enough people around me that are like, I'm going to let you try and figure this shit out. And that's one thing with Kyle. He's been willing to be patient with me to figure this stuff out. But never mind that. What Kyle does is very unusual. He's like, how do I ease the burden? Okay, so I'll think about, where do I got to place this kettlebell when we're doing this variation with this damn thing? And Kyle's already thinking, this guy's already has like a million things to think about. Let me just put that kettlebell right where the hell I think it needs to be, where I think this guy is thinking. I already know you're thinking that. As I'm seeing it, I'm like, oh, thank God. So that's what's amazing about FP, is that people will see the burden that I'm carrying, and they'll be like, well, let me see if I can ease that burden a little bit, because this guy's kind of like having to figure some shit out. And I think it's amazing. It's
just
amazing.
We're a group of contributors.
Yes,
and
it's amazing.
I finally, I mean, I've always felt this way, but I've kind of like, there was a time where I was like, I'm kind of an outsider, and now I feel like I'm definitely an insider in terms of the whole thing.
Yep.
It's like everyone in FP is trying to contribute to the betterment of society, like betterment of people, betterment of training methods. Like, it's not just like
we're hoping that we're doing that.
Yeah, we're
hoping that we're doing.
We're hoping that we contribute that way.
And that's the premise, that we're at least putting that intent. We can't know for sure that we're doing that, but we're putting our best foot forward to hope that we're actually going down that path. And I think after a certain point, I think it's definitive, bro. Look at all the stuff that we're doing. I think we're helping a lot of people. The guys that that wrestle, that do FP, feel better doing FP. I think it's within a realm of certainty that we are doing that. But I think the main premise is that I'm hoping that I'm doing the right things. And I think by you hoping that you're going that right way, and by you putting in the work, that you're going to get there. And
it's not just hoping, but it's like correcting. You know, you have this hope, but if you're not meeting your expectations, you're willing to radically change and then go.
Well, you have to, bro.
Yeah, but you see some people that don't do that.
Yeah, so
there's so many people that'll just be like, I hope that you're this thing, but I'm going to keep doing the same thing and hope that it gets there. Yep. Well, no, we see that that's not the result what we wanted. We had to change something up.
Well, obviously, if Kyle comes to me and he messages me, hey, I got somebody cranked on my neck today, and I'm like, okay, back to the drawing board. What do I got to tell this guy? Now I got to sit there and it's a constant, because it's multiple people. Be like, hey, I tweaked my knee doing this, right? Or my shoulder got impinged doing that, or my plantar fascia, it keeps cramping. So people will throw this at me, I'm like, oh God. So it's like, I don't have an option, bro. If I'm trying to solve the problem and you're putting it on me, then guess what I have to do? It's like, I have to put in work. I have to figure that stuff out. And it's like, as a trainer, the best thing that I can say, if you're going to be training people, is never come in with the mentality that you already know or that you're an expert, because I'll just tell you right now, you're not. I just tell you point blank. And I'm not saying this to be like, sound like a complete arrogant dick, but I've been around this industry long enough, and I've gotten results well enough to know that most people in our industry really have no idea what the hell they're doing. So don't come in like that. And I think fortunately, the industry's moving that way, because that's how I came in, bro. When I first started training people, I was like, dude, I shouldn't be charging people $70 an hour for my services, but I'm doing it, and I'm at a 24-hour fitness, and I'm charging people this much money. I better get to work. I better figure my stuff out, because this is way too much money to be paid for me doing what the hell I'm doing. You know what I mean? And so it's like, when you carry that in your head, where you're like, let me be more honest about myself, you're going to have a better service. But in our industry, in personal training, bro, every trainer that comes into our field says, what? I'm the best in my field. Even though I have no reasons to justify that, I'm the best in my field.
Just keep improving, guys. That's
the premise. But the only way you can improve is by acknowledging that, hey, man, like, I don't really know everything, and I'm always trying to enhance myself. And sometimes I have to make radical decisions that are going to be kind of contradictory to what I once believed. Is that kind of a fair assessment that you can make for yourself? I've had to do the exact same thing on multiple things. Like, there's been so many times where I'll be working on these techniques, and then I'll do something like I'll put something on Instagram. Like about 3-4 years ago, I put something on Instagram, and then people were like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! You're not supposed to be doing those types of ranges of motion." And I'm like, let me send you a video.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I tell you guys this, but I'm telling you, take it with a grain of salt because things are going to change, man. They're going to change. At some point, I'll say they're never going to change because that's a physical rule. Sometimes I'll say that, but in general, there's going to be times where I'm like, look, things are going to change, and like look at what's going on here in sports. We have to account for what's going on in the environment. We can never assume that the first plan is the right plan.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah.
Definitely.
Anyway, Kyle, it's been a pleasure having you on, bro. And I guess we're about to get a session on our end and keep trying to code this damn thing out. So thank you for giving us the time. And do you have anything else that you'd like to say? Any shouts out you'd like to give?
Yeah, just shout out to my wife, my family, all my sponsors. Thank you for everything you do and allow me to do what I love to do.
Who are your sponsors?
Finger Lakes Wrestling Club, Titan Mercury, Milwaukee Tools, Asics, X Athletic, Pure and Clean Sports, Cherry Bundy, and I hope I didn't forget anybody.
Okay. That's
thanks,
a lot of
guys.
sponsors to remember.
I know.
But yeah. Thank you guys for supporting a guy like this, and thanks for. Thank you for everything, Kyle, and to everybody that's in the FP community. Keep supporting Kyle. He's had to undergo a lot of pressure, even being a part of FP and putting himself out there like that. And on my end, I'm gonna go up to bat and try and crank it as much as possible. Pablo's gonna be on that stuff, and we're gonna crank it out and keep racking up dubs and making sure that we're staying healthy. And never mind that having a healthy life, even 50, 60 years down the road.
For sure. Thank you.
Have a good one.